I think we need to hide out. We're still working out some of the technology stuff. I'm figuring out we actually need two computers, one person to run the actual Zoom room, and then somebody else to manage the okay. The closed captioning is something that new that we're trying to, we're working on accessibility issues as well. When it comes to our ward operations, and actually I've had a really great dialogue with a constituent recently who's been helping us just do better from an accessibility perspective. So this is the first time we're using the closed captioning. And if you're joining us virtually, you can actually get the closed captioning translated in one of like 22 languages, including traditional and simplified Chinese. Everybody's locked up. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. I'm Alderwoman Lee from the 11th Ward. This is our quarterly meeting for the ward. We try to do this once a quarter to provide some like high-level overviews of things that are going on, current topics for the ward. I'd like to first introduce my staff that are here. Carlos Diaz is my chief of staff. Lisa Chu is our services coordinator. This is more like a manager, not coordinator. This is Zoe Chan, newest member of our team. She's the policy and legislative director. Then we have our interns, Grace Bauer and Natalie Fung in the back there. So thanks everybody for being here again today. We've got a lot to cover in this agenda. I want to save time for questions as well. We tried to put together a nice diverse array of things, some fun things, some serious things. There's lots of serious topics. As you can see, we've got a lot of folks in the room here today. We're going to talk about safety later. But first, I thought we'd start with our friends from the Remova for an update on what's going on at the Remova, how construction is going, and I'd love to introduce Tyler Nevius. Did I pronounce that right?
Good enough.
Okay, you're gonna have to teach me because
Okay.
like I care about those things. Tyler is from the Remova Theater, and his wife Emily is here as well. And want to introduce Peter?
Then it's Pete Faulkner, he's our director of operations.
Great.
Day-to-day.
So I'll pass it over to you. We've got the images that you sent.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They can see you. This camera, if you want to stand, that's probably better because this camera is like a 360 camera. It'll find you.
Sure. So just great to see everybody. As Neil, Tyler needed stuff, my wife Emily, just so everybody knows, we live on 34, we've been there for a few years now. We're really good holding up very good as well. We've been working on the remote for 6 years, which is sort of daunting to acknowledge, but we're actually going to be opening here in a month. We've got we're fortunate to hire a team who opened in College Hall and Nelson not long ago. We've got a couple of other senior staff members who joined us as well, and we're ramping up to open probably September, October timeframe. We're just finalizing that date pretty soon. You'll be able to see the site. We're putting in drywall right now. We finalizing all 50 pieces. So we're really wrapping up the space over the next, I'd say, 2 to 4 weeks. And then you're going to start seeing brewing equipment coming in. You're for PA for the venue and things like that. And we're really excited about we're going to ramp up our hiring in probably August, maybe early September. We've got a massive amount of people here. We're absolutely going to be looking for the community first. We're going to be hiring hospitality staff, we're going to be hiring people that are experienced in entertainment production, and some people that are brewing here as well. We're also getting ready to announce our Intercraft brewery partner who's been working with us for 5 years now. But we're actually getting ready to make that public. So that should be really exciting. And all in all, it's just going, well, I guess we can consider 6 years as well. It's going, pretty well. But we're super excited. You can some things that you can be on the lookout for. We're going to have community first or open house, working out with other, working with other business owners, trying to make our schedule available. So other restaurants like Martinez, like UP, Duck Inn, we're going to Kevin Brandon, our partner bar, and various other restaurants that have all been very good. And we work with them, so we'll set up some food opportunities. We're going to set up with Alderman Lee probably a quarterly just community engagement platform. So we'll have an opportunity to work with other businesses, just the public in general. There are a lot of people coming in, making sure that we're messing anything up or people are, unhappy with what we're doing to address that. So just we're going to reach out to the community. And again, apologies for everybody, just the basics. It's going to be an 1,800 person live music venue. It's a brewery that's going to make be able to make about 6,000 cases a year, which we're primarily going to sell on site for the local businesses. And then we've got a 250 person club upstairs. And yes, just a couple of the quick images. It's hard to see. This is our interior rendering of the 1,800 person venue.
We can't. We won't know better to ask that in advance.
Yeah, 1,200 people on the first floor, 400 people in the balcony that we put in, and then we've got we call it a VIP area too for about another 100 folks. And it's all to the historical spot as well. So the interior is just like every year, the bathroom. This is the tap room. When you walk in from Halstead, this is what the high top tables are going to look like. We've got 20 taps, which our brewery is going to be. We'll put that about 15 beers at a time. We're known for a bunch of different offerings, and we'll have a bunch of mixed drinks as well. Going to go to the next picture, and I know I'm talking more than I plan to. Happens a lot. This is the Bridgeport Grill, which we're bringing back.
The remote.
Or excuse me, remote grill, Bridgeport Grills next door. Remote grill, we're bringing back 19 seats. We're going to be able to get through the tap, and we get a large kitchen to be able to service the whole footprint. We can go to the next picture. And this is the movie concessions that we're bringing back. You're going to have 16 beers or wines. 12 beers, probably 4 mixed drinks. That's the things that mix a little bit. This is going to look like the old 50s, 60s, movie concession counter where you'll be able to get some food too. We're really excited about 3 of those.
The next picture.
Yeah, the next one. This is another version of it. All really cool, old like Bridgeport. Should be remote green, bright reds. It should be really beautiful. The green bar that we're going to have. We're going to be, featuring local artwork. Those types of things as well. The space is going to be made available for firefighters. If you all want to get virtual meetings, definitely grab some beers out and it's great for everybody. CP or CPD, everyone. Do we go to the next image? And this is the second floor event space where hopefully all we will be having a lot of meetings like this. And again, anybody who wants to use it, we got not for profit we set up as well. Our goal is to find others that are doing positive things and making space available. It's absolutely not just meant for concerts and all that. It's for the community, especially in the support that we were fortunate enough to receive the commitment side. And then this is what it look like for events. We'll hopefully be having a lot of those. And just last pieces, again, it is all community in our demo. We got about 50 investors, majority of which are from Bridgeport. So you're going to know somebody that owns the place, reach out to them, take advantage of them, and ask them for great.
Also, remotechicago.com is live. That's on Wednesday. And you can sign up for email updates as well as opt in or so stay tuned for that. And then one thing we'll be highlighting in the next I'd say 6 to 8 weeks is the actual job fair. That will be the neighborhood, right? So it'll be a open call sort of speed dating version, but we'll be coming folks in the neighborhood and try to get folks in the right path to whether they have 10 years, 15 years experience, or they have no experience, there's an opportunity for everybody.
Great, thank you for that, Pete. Are there questions from anybody in the room, in the chat room at all? We'll just double check. Really appreciate the update. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If there are questions outside of this or anything, especially people that might be looking for a job, we're remotechicago.com or just remote Chicago on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is probably where we're most active. Do not hesitate to reach out. We've got about 3 or 4 people to manage it and we'll respond.
Great. Yes, sir.
What is one of the marquee will be put back up, or is it going to? No, it's actually going to be put back up, being redone. I think there's development design. They'll take it back in their own places in the city that do it. We have your north side where. But it's going to be out in the office. And it's all going to be just like you remember we had everything brought back like, oh, this is what it was.
Questions in the chat?
Yes, correct.
Couple questions in the chat. One from Anna. What is the total amount of public money that went to this private venture?
Total amount, it's Nice part of the question. Total amount of TIF that we received was $9 million. We also received $1 million grant from the state of Illinois. The TIF was only received if I committed to staying with the project for 10 years. So I can't receive the money and then sell it to anyone else. So Finley and I are committed to being a part of Bridgeport for the rest of our lives, and we had to actually contractually commit to that.
Great, and then the other question is, what is the estimated open month/date? Do you guys have something harder you want to share with the public?
So with construction, it's always fun. I would say we're looking at probably October, early October. We're putting in a pretty amazing sound system. We need to get everything set up, get our staff trained and things like that. So I feel comfortable saying sometime in October, but be on the lookout. We'll let the community know first to have something like that ready for the most of the year.
Great, thank you. Is there a traffic mitigation plan and has CTA and CDOT been looped in?
Yes, we worked heavily with the city of Chicago. They've been unbelievably supportive as a part of our plan. Only as you know, we need to basically improve a lot of the public access as well as some of the corners, given the increment traffic that we're going to be driving. We've also put in or required the lot street that should hold about 70 vehicles to try and keep traffic out of the public way. We're going to be working on more divvy spots, things like that for bicyclists. I know there's a tremendous amount of those in the community and things like that as well. But yes, we work with all of them.
We'll be utilizing most likely a valet service and some of our friends offer on the that have the parking, just to make sure that we are the least impactful as possible on regular traffic going on and try to avoid those jams. And you know, my favorite part about our location is that it's so easily accessible off the TPA.
Yeah, between 35th Street bus and the Halsted bus, people should have pretty easy access if they want to commute over. Awesome. So Jesse's got a question. There's barely been enough parking, barely enough parking as it is on Halsted on inside streets. Will you be providing parking lots for your customers? So I think Jesse, you may have joined a little bit late, but yes, there is parking. There's the parking lot that's across the street, just to the west. I'm sorry, to the east.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm directionally challenged.
Well, you're looking at it from the south side.
Yeah.
But yes, we got 70 spots to the east. We've also worked with parking, as Pete mentioned, and we have a number of other local lots, schools, other public groups that we can donate to, or other things like that. Additional parking is needed, just to again try and mitigate the impact as much.
Right, and as we lead up to the opening of the Remova, I'll be looking to engage with community members that live in and around the Remova to talk about residential parking, if that's something that we want to do to protect resident parking. So that's something we're definitely open to having a discussion about.
As well.
Okay, I think that's it on questions. I will say, I'm really excited that this is you can see the big bright light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's a little bit later than what everybody had wanted, but I can tell you that in the last year and change that I've gotten to know Tyler and the team over at Remova, I've been really impressed by the partnership that has been forged with the community. The fact that, you know, part of this deal was that you have some real skin in the game. I think you have skin, arms, legs, your whole family is here. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. And you've been a great part of the community and look forward for that to continue.
No, thank you. Again, please, if anyone has questions, we've gotten a lot over the years. We always respond. We're having to speak to this person. We're really excited about being as transparent as possible. So if anyone has anything, let us know. And pretty soon, they know we'll be.
That's great. Listen, go on to the next part of the agenda. Tyler and Sue were gracious enough to come. They actually have another event to go to, so that's why we put them at the top of the agenda, but this is a fun way to start everything. If people have questions, we'll have them reach out to you directly, or if we get them, we'll connect you. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. So I'll talk just a little bit more, since we're on the subject of the 35th and the Halsted corridor from 35th to 37th. With the Remova, scheduled to be open this fall, and there are plans to have a microbrew or brewery inside. I had to lift the liquor moratorium on Halsted between 35th and 37th. that has been formalized. It was approved by the city council at the June meeting. So for at least the next 12 months, the liquor moratorium on Halsted from 35th to 37 has been lifted. The additional step that I've taken to try to boost economic development and investment in that corridor is I will be, or just introduced an ordinance to upzone a number of buildings on the east side of Halsted from 35th to 36. And I don't know which one of my predecessors did it, but they downzoned many of those commercial business properties to residential. And that makes it a very challenging environment for anybody to look to invest, because whoever wants to do anything that is not a single family home and different than what was there previously would need a zoning change to do that. So my proposing a map amendment, hopefully will stir a lot of people to take another look at what we've got going on here in Bridgeport. Especially with the Remova opening up in the fall, we're really optimistic that that's going to encourage people to look at the district. We want restaurants, maybe another bar or two, we'll see. But as I've been out and about in the community, I hear time and time again, we want things that we can walk to, and there's really nothing south of 35th Street on Halsted. Since the Bridgeport restaurant closed, there's no food. With the Remova opening up, we will at least have their tap room and the Remova grill. Hopefully we'll have more than that in the near future. Any questions about that right now? Great. So why don't we go to the next? I'm sorry. This is all one slide. I'm just gonna go down and read the bullets. How about I just look at the presentation? So, wanted to provide an update on the menu. As you know, or you may not know, we get $1.5 million annually. Every ward does, regardless of the size of your ward. So, you know, you could, some wards are much bigger than others, and some wards are much smaller. So I think we have a fairly big ward. What's nice is at the end of the day, a big portion of our ward is really made up of the stockyards. And it doesn't require as much maintenance. They have kind of their own thing going on there with an FFA. But I wanted to give you an idea of what we have authorized so far, which is about a third of the menu money so far. We're waiting for CDOT to give us engineering estimates. So the way, and I'll just give a quick primer on how the menu works. If you call us and say there's a pothole or the street is really bad in front of my house, there's multiple potholes, or the curb is chipped, or there's a tree that is lifting up the sidewalk and I need a new sidewalk. All of those things we put into 311, and then we put on our menu to get what's called an engineering estimate from CDOT. CDOT will then send an engineer out to survey whatever the complaint is, and then they'll come up with a cost of what they think it will cost to repair whatever that is. And then we spend down that 1.5 million on projects like that. So we've got about 500,000 that we've already authorized. We're waiting for probably another, $1.5 million worth of engineering estimates to come back. Yeah, because we submit $3 million in requests because we can't do everything, so we have the ability to pick and choose. So we're waiting for engineering estimates to come back. Last year, there was a big strike of one of the unions, and it really held up construction season because there was no concrete or asphalt available. Those were the union workers that were on strike. So it really halted a lot of projects. So CDOT is still catching up from last year's projects, which is why they've been all put behind. The other thing that I can tell you though, is that in addition to what we get in menu money, the city does have a capital budget, of which so far we've been they've shown us that they're starting projects to the tune of about $815,000 already in the ward. So we don't have to pay for everything. So we get one green alley, and a green alley is a concrete alley with a new drain in it. We have a lot of issues across the city, not just in the 11th ward, with alleys that flood. So there's a big alley that's going in right now between Wallace and Low from 35th to 33rd. So it's a really long alley. But excited to get that because a lot of people's garages and basements were getting flooded because of the way that the alley was configured. Any questions on menu? We're gonna talk about participatory budgeting a little bit later in the agenda, so I won't talk about that right now. Current construction in the work, the alley that's going in, between Wallace and Lowe. If you're driving around the ward anywhere, I know it's really frustrating and loud and dirty. But there's a lot of construction going on between sewer main replacements along Halsted in front of our office. You'll notice that they have not repaved the road yet. What's happening right now is because they replaced the sewer main. The water department, has seen fit to offer lead service line replacement to all of the buildings that are along that corridor. So our ward office included, we just got a new service line, removing the old lead service lines, and that's at no cost to the resident, to the property owner. So if you're on a call, you're in the room, if there's sewer work going on in your area and someone knocks on your door to talk to you about lead service line replacement, listen to them. It is anywhere from a $20,000 to $30,000 expense that the city has funding to take care of. We don't know how long that's going to last, but it's working right now. The older the building, the more likely it is that you have a lead service line going into your home. Other construction that's going on, you'll see that there is some viaduct work that's going on in Norfolk Southern. You'll probably see that if you're going through on the south end of the ward. That they're blocking some things off. They're replacing support inside the viaduct, which is a welcome sight. Because I think if you ever walk through any of these viaducts, it's very unnerving to see that you can see through some of these supports because they're rusted out. They are being replaced. They are structurally sound. We're glad to be able to continue to have this dialogue with the Norfolk Southern on the improvements that they're making. And hopefully we can get that towards the northern end of the ward with the other railroads that control are responsible for things sort of in and around sort of Chinatown in that area, including my own viaduct, which is on a daily falling apart. There's also ongoing utility work between People Gas and ComEd and then fiber optic stuff. I don't have all of them, the maps of those. If you have questions about construction going on your block, I did have a good constituent come in today and say, you know, there's, I believe, gas company work that's going on, water main replacement on their block just further south on Low, but for the last 2 or 3 days, nobody's been working. And I know that's really frustrating because if we put up no parking signs, the city puts up no parking signs, constituents, residents, they obey those rules, and then no work is going on. And it is just frustrating. So as those things happen, feel free to call our ward office. We don't have cameras everywhere. We don't have our eyes on every single inch of the ward constantly. So you'll help us by letting us know, and then we can make the call to find out what's going on. I can give you, okay, that's at the end, dog park committee. And I know there's a couple of people who have attended dog park meetings. We have officially kicked off our efforts to pull together a dog friendly area, AKA a dog park for the 11th ward. Vita Jimenez, a member of the community, is leading that effort. They've had, I think, at least 3 meetings at this point. What is required of a dog friendly area is that there's community in the game, if you will. The park district does not pay for or maintain any of these properties. It really has to be community driven. And the park approves it. They provide all of the design work and everything. They'll work with the community to do that. But from a funding and maintenance perspective, that is required by the community. The community has to come up with that. And I'm happy to be working alongside the committee. I'm supportive of it. The committee is going to be forming a nonprofit organization as well to help with the funding piece of this. They'll be seeking sponsorships and grants, also doing some fundraising in the neighborhood, just to drum up more support for this. There's not been a place that's been identified as of yet, but that's part of the process. You know, here in the 11th ward, we don't have a ton of just excess space sitting around that would be appropriate for a dog park. But we're looking at city-owned properties, we're looking at properties that are owned by others, and then we're also having a conversation with the park district about existing parks. I think that maybe there's 1, possibly 2 opportunities where we may be able to convince them to allow us to put a dog-friendly area, but they have pretty strict rules about that. on the agenda that you received, and we'll email this to everybody that, is on the call, actually, there's going to be a QR code that's gonna flash up later. If you wanna sign up for any of these committees, you can, use the QR code or reach out to our office. The more people we have, the better, because this is a long-term commitment, the ongoing maintenance of the facility has to be taken on by the community. And we need everybody to show up. So again, Vita Jimenez is leading that. We're going to have a booth at the Chinatown Summer Fair, the weekend of July 29th and 30th, and we'll have some more material out there. And I think Vita and some of her committee members are gonna be out there as well. We will have a dog from the area in our tent. There will be a dog biscuits and water, and maybe some fun giveaways for any of the puppies that come over. Last thing on infrastructure stuff is protected bike lanes. We've had conversations with CDOT about their plans for additional and putting out additional protected bike lanes. For this year, we're not much of the 11th ward is actually included in their plan for this year, but we've already begun the discussion about going into 2024. In particular, I let CDOT know that I'm interested really partnering with some of the wards that are our neighbors, the 12th ward. Our ward from east to west is 35th Street from the Dan Ryan on LaSalle Street all the way to Damon. And if we think about how the city is looking at improving bike infrastructure and really trying to create an environment that is more safe and conducive to people cycling between points of interest. The 35th Street corridor, I feel like, is one of the best places to try to do this in a more meaningful. Right now, if we try to ride east to west from, let's say, Damon, the length of our ward, in some spots, it'll be great, and in others, it'll just be downright treacherous, especially during a White Cascade. So, you know, you've got folks that are looking at safety right around Fox Park, which we're gonna get to later. But as far as protected bike lanes go, I think some of the more challenging things, if it's not 35th Street, is like Halsted Street. I actually took the CDOT commissioner on a bike ride last year, and we rode from 37th and Halsted all the way into Pilsen, and then to 18th Street, and then east into Chinatown. And it just changes. There's bike lanes, good bike lanes, and then there's nothing, and then you're riding 5 inches from another vehicle, from an actual vehicle. So I think one of the things that we talked about is looking at other alternative streets, if there's not room to reasonably put a protected bike lane in, to maintain traffic, and to look at some of the other residential streets where we may have better opportunity. So a lot of those things are on the table. Nothing's off the table at this point, but they know that it's a priority. I can tell you that along the 18th Street Bridge, headed east from Canal Street towards Wentworth, CDOT has begun to put in, they've installed, I didn't look today to see how many more they've done, but they were installing what are called quick curbs. They're not concrete barriers per se, but they are heavier. They're better than plastic. They're heavier than plastic. And they are bolted down to the ground. It does create a more of a physical barrier along that corridor. I think part of the challenge right now, though, is we have consistent issues with cars parking in front of the big Blue Star building at 329 West 18th Street. That's consistently blocking the bike lane. So I'd like for CDOT to take a look at how we close that off so that people can't park their cars in front. There is a designated drive-in area for that building, but it's placed real funny. And I know that the cycling community is always very troubled by the fact that these cars get there. We're not able to always enforce parking and issue citations in time. So all of these things are going on in the ward today. We're looking to increase the number of miles of protected bike lanes that we have in the ward. We don't have any right now. The last fun thing that I'll tell you though is that going out of the ward at the Wells Wentworth connector, I did get a tour of the Wells Wentworth connector. Is everybody familiar with what the Wells Wentworth connector is? Okay. Where King Tom Park is along the river, just south of there is an area called the 78, right? That is a big swath of blank land that someone was proposing a casino be built there during the whole casino conversation. Related Midwest owns all that property. part of what the redevelopment of that area was going to include was creating an actual road from Wentworth to where Wells starts essentially. And that Wells Wentworth connector will take you all the way, north of Roosevelt and dumps you out basically by the British School. If you know where the Icon Theater is, just a little bit north of there. But what's great about it is from a cycling perspective, there's no good way to get downtown from our ward that's super safe on a bicycle. Right, so your options are ride east to like State Street. Clark Street's not safe at all for anybody to ride downtown on. The bike lane that's been created there, it's actually not on the street, it's on the sidewalk. And it's raised, so it's completely protected from car traffic. And you can get back and forth from downtown very quickly, because there's nothing back there right now. There's not even a traffic signal. I don't have an idea as to when exactly they're gonna open that. But as soon as we get word that they're going to open that up, I know that one of their concerns, and I shared the concern too, is that while there's not a whole lot going on back there, a nice stretch of road like that's gonna be a drag racer's paradise. So there are raised crosswalks. That's not going to affect the cyclists, because again, the bike lanes are not on the street, they're on the sidewalks. But what they're trying to do now is make it less attractive. They're putting Jersey barriers from NASCAR actually to narrow the driving lane so that they can't drag race on that stretch. I'm told sometime in the fall is when it's going to open. Again, as soon as I have that information, I will. There's a question. Sorry, there's a question in the chat. Loomis between Archer and Cermak, where the cement factory is. Did they install some white flexible bike lane dividers? They didn't, okay, great, they did, but those have been driven over. So I think what we can do, they've been driven over, and there are only a few of them remaining. Any way they can put something permanent or replace them there. I think that's a great suggestion, Alan, and we'll talk to CDOT to see if we can get some quick curbs put in there. I think that would be an improvement over what was there before. We don't want people to be able to drive over these things. Question for Matthew. Are there any greenways under consideration for the ward? At this time, no, but I'm very open to the conversation about creating a greenway through the ward. I think we've got a couple of good candidate streets in Union and Emerald. Those are two one-way streets, one going north, one going south. And they're really wide streets. And we don't necessarily need that wide, we don't need 4 lanes of, well, 2 curb lanes and then two traffic lanes going in one direction. I think that those are absolutely great candidates for a community greenway for cycling. Halsted, Archer, and State should be safe, but see that ripped out all the bike lanes on Archer. Yeah, we're working on that, Anna. And I'm gonna be really interested in the infrastructure conversation that we're gonna be having. And we wanting to engage the community on some creative ways for us to improve bike lane availability and where we place these. If you're interested, let us know. We'll make sure we get you on the list to be part of that conversation. Any other questions about infrastructure? Yeah.
I think that you're, maybe the possibility of crossing that, coming, all that part district, my remember that some progress.
You are not dreaming it. I just want to make sure it wasn't a question that was related to your, so the empty lot across from Jackalope has been purchased by the Chicago Park District. There were plans to make that what's called a passive park. I think Patrick, my predecessor, had was looking for that to be sort of a compromise for a dog park. Personally think it's way too small to be any reasonable size dog park unless it's just for chihuahuas and like teacup puppies. But we are planning on doing something with that to make it a space that can be used by the community more comfortably. It is on the list of things that I've asked the park district to look at getting back on the rails for us. I think with everything that went on in the last year and a half or so in my transition, that just kind of got put on the back burner. But the property's been purchased, there is a plan in place. And unfortunately, the park district is like so many other departments right now, very understaffed, so they're very backed up. Haven't lost it, it's gonna happen, it's just a matter of. Yeah. Has CDOT given a timetable for upgrading the Loomis Street bike lane from flexi post to concrete protection? So Matt, it's not currently planned, I don't think, but I'll confirm that, and if it's not, we're gonna request that they install the quick curbs. Because that is the other place, I know we have a lot of cyclists that are using that corridor to head north. You are welcome. Thank you for joining the call. Okay, we'll move on. Maybe. Okay, there we go. No. There we go. Okay, I'll get through these quickly. New ward committee, so as we were saying earlier, we're gonna be pulling together a bunch of new ward committees. As I've said throughout, since I got this position, I'm not interested in doing this alone. I need people and I need the sort of collective energy and expertise of all of our residents and people who have businesses in our community. So here's a list of the ward committees that we're creating: participatory budgeting, economic development, zoning advisory board, arts and recreation. We talked about the dog park earlier, youth council, and senior engagement. I will give you a high level. So from a participatory budgeting perspective, this has to do with the menu, the infrastructure menu. And the idea is that we create a council of about 6 constituents located in neighborhoods across the ward, who are going to determine the infrastructure projects that should be considered for our ward's menu. For that spend, we'll designate some amount of money that will then, this committee will select projects and then put out for a vote. And that's the purchase of church. So there's 2 levels of participation: the people who are going to be sort of the Uber volunteers to really help determine which project we want to move forward, and then to have the community vote on which projects get funded ultimately. And that gives everybody an idea of kind of what we have to do from an aldermanic perspective of really prioritizing what gets funded in any given year. The Economic Development Committee will support commercial development along the key business corridors in the ward, liaising with the various chambers of commerce, and then assisting with applications for small business grants. The Zoning Advisory Board is pretty self-explanatory. They're going to meet monthly to review and make recommendations on zoning relief requests related to development projects. Today, how it's done, people come in off the street, they talk to my staff and I, we're doing this sort of on a, ad hoc basis. What I'm looking to do is have this committee, be the toll gate, if you will, or the gatekeepers, because what I want more than anything is for there to be community engagement and input as to the kind of community that we want, and zoning plays a big part of that. From whether or not, like I mentioned to you earlier, along 35th, between 35th and 37th on Halsted. The downzoning of those properties really halted any development and made it much more difficult and made it really expensive for community residents who own those properties to add anything new. What I'd like to do is to have this committee help us think about the entire ward as a whole. We don't just have commercial districts along Halsted. We have them along 35th Street. We have Archer. We have Chinatown, we have Wentworth, Chinatown Square and Wentworth. So there are a lot of different areas. I want to make sure that we have a diverse cross-section of people representing every part of the ward, contributing to the committee and really being invested as to what the future of the ward is from a zoning perspective. Arts and recreation. This is Nick Pizzato likes to call his committee the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events Committee, the Happy Committee. This is kind of the happy committee for the ward, because it's all about how we make the ward, a fun place to be. It's a place that's safe to have leisure time. So arts and recreation, so supporting the efforts of local community artists to build up programming and, art installations in and around the ward. Incorporating the work of local artists, it really reflects the cultural diversity of our ward as well. That may include working with other committees like economic development or zoning to think about what we want in community benefits agreements. Someone's gonna do a big development in the ward, maybe what we want to include as a condition of them investing in our community, and if they're gonna get anything like TIP money, is that another give back to the community really is funding different arts projects that will improve the community. I already talked about the dog park, the youth council. We're looking to create a youth council made up of high school residents who are gonna engage and organize. I'm really caring a lot more about what's happening in our community, how they can contribute in a meaningful way. That can include anything from, doing things like registering people to vote, helping seniors, shovel their walk, determining where, different investments might be made. I'm also gonna carve out a little bit of menu money for the youth council so that they can have some real control and autonomy over what gets invested on their behalf, in their own. I'll also, work and consult with them on legislative priorities too. I don't know what's going on next door in the room. As soon as I said it, they stopped. I didn't know I was that powerful. Watch them start again. So I'm gonna consult with them on legislative priorities too, because I really do believe that, we've got a great opportunity with young people, to really be more invested in what's happening in their community in general. They want, to see there be like, I don't know, nobody's asked me about pickleball yet in this board. A lot of my colleagues are getting asked about pickleball, but I don't even know that that's an interest. Maybe they want to have, later hours for pools during the summer. Whatever those are, I'd like to hear, what their thoughts are and how to make the community better for them and ensure that this community is here for them when they're adults and that they want to stay. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to build. And then senior engagement. I think most of you know, we have a really robust senior population in the ward. We have a lot of folks that like to be highly engaged. Every single one of our park districts has a senior club. And at all of the senior buildings that we have 7 of them in the ward. Along Wentworth, the Armour Square Apartments, there's the Long Life Apartments by Ward School, and then there's 2 in Chinatown, one run by the Chinese American Service League, and then Chinatown Senior Apartments. So we want to be really thoughtful about the programming that we're putting on, helping people to age in place. We have a senior services coordinator at the ward currently, but we can use some help. And I'd like to get some of the seniors involved too, in terms of what they want to see happen. So these are all the committees that we're ambitious. Not gonna lie, I mean, you can see that it sounds all great, but we've got to get people in place, and we want to make sure that they've got some real ability to affect change in each of these areas. Any questions about the committee? And again, you can apply by using the QR code that's on the screen or on the sheet that we handed out in the room. All right, now we can move on to one of our guests tonight. We have a new commander here in the 9th district. I'd like to introduce you to Commander Curtis Mullinex. If you wouldn't mind standing, introducing yourself. You want to pull the chair around? You can sit here. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Hi, my name is Kurt Ballnick. I'm the new commander of the 9th district. I'm not new to the district. I was here as a captain for the last 2.5 years. So I am familiar with the district and familiar with the challenges in the district. I can't say I come with all the answers, but I'm going to steal from Alderman Lee and say I understand that this is a group effort. We're not separate from the community. We're part of the community too. We all live and obviously work in separate communities in the city. So if you see something, I always ask you, don't. One of the things that we have in common is people sometimes hesitate to call because they think they're bothering. You're not bothering, it's our job to answer calls when you see something. So
If you have neighbors and you want more police service, you just have to make sure you call. But, like my predecessor, Don Jerome, he is still my boss, he's just up a little higher. I want to make sure that I'm responsive to the things that the ward needs. So, if you ever need something specifically, please reach out to the district. You can even reach out to Alderman Lee and she'll make sure I get the message.
If you have them on speed dial. I asked, Commander Nolan, also to talk a little bit about just trends in the district right now. All but I want to say about 3 blocks of the 11th ward fall inside the 9th district. So the northeast corner of the ward, we actually have Clark Street from 16th to 22nd to Surmat. Is in the 1st district, so that's the only part of the 11th ward that isn't yours, and the 9th. We have regular beat meetings for CAPS, we advertise those in our newsletter. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, you can let one of the young ladies know, or send us an email and we'll sign you up. Or it's actually, I'm sorry, Zoe, you on our staff, so on the ball, has a QR code for that as well. They happen bi-monthly. Do you want to talk about just things that you're seeing? You know, I've been to all of the CAPS meetings the last couple of weeks. And I know that we've had an uptick in a couple of things since between May and July. So motor vehicle thefts, and that's not carjacking. That is just cars on the street being broken into and stolen. I think we still have challenges with catalytic converters. And then if you want to talk a little bit about that, I get asked a lot, like what's being done. I encourage everybody to come to CAPS meetings to really get the best information on a beat by beat basis, because what's happening in Chinatown isn't necessarily happening in McKinley Park and isn't happening, you know, in Canary Wharf.
I would still encourage you to come out to the CAPS meeting. That's where you get more one-on-one with the actual officers. The CAPS office, who is very responsive to the community's needs, and that's where you can meet other people from your community. That's a great meeting ground for this. Some of the things that we see, and I'm sure it's not, you know, lost on you guys. The motor vehicle theft is a citywide trend right now. That's it's out of control. This last year was carjacking, and they seem to be going more towards cars that are parked or stealing cars. So one of the things we always encourage you to do, don't leave keys in the car. And you might think it's really weird that I would say that, but a lot of people still leave their keys in the car, even if they're not running. Don't leave your keys in your car. If you see something that I'm going to reiterate this, I'm sorry, but if you see something in your neighborhood that doesn't look right, tow trucks that have no business being in your neighborhood, that's the easiest way to steal a car. Look at the tow truck and just pull it out. You can don't question tow trucks. If you have a question about that, make sure you call. Again, one of the things that we see a lot lately with drag races, and I don't know what you want to call them. They're just, it's a street takeover. We're very strapped for personnel. We respond to these things as fast as possible, but we can't respond in 1 and 2s. Our president doesn't have the power that he used to scare people off. We have to respond in numbers in order to get these people to move. I don't want to point to a neighboring district. The 8th district has a real problem with it, worse than us. They have a lot of places to be drag races like the conglomerate, and they're basically chasing these guys around all night. And what gets lost there is that we don't have the ability then to respond to calls. We're chasing these. They're actually quite violent groups of young people, mostly from the suburbs, not from the neighborhoods, and we're chasing them from spot to spot to spot. Always happy if someone has some ideas on how to address it. Always happy to take in those ideas. Maybe we can't implement it, but we'll certainly give it a thought and give it talk it through, see if there's something we can do. But that's one of the things that really takes away from our ability to respond to calls inside the ward is having to chase these people around. Because if we let them set up for too long, then they get in fights and they fight each other, and that's where, you know, we had some trouble last year with them fighting amongst each other, and some deaths occurred based on that. Catalytic converters, if you ever go to a place where they're going to mark a catalytic converter, please take advantage of the service. Usually it's provided free. They don't do it all day, but if you get there, that's fine. If you have a Hyundai or Kia, I'm sorry, but it's very easy to steal. They're making improvements on that, but a lot of times. Police officers, CATS officers, and different businesses are giving out clubs and putting on your car. I know it's a throwback to the '80s, but it's effective against these car thieves who can peel a column and take the car really quick. So if you can get a hold of the club, please do, because they are.
Great. So, couple questions in the chat. Oh, you've already answered that one. Okay. What's the total amount of carjackings the ninth district year to date? Do you have some sense of that?
I don't have that.
You know, and we'll go ahead and, find the answer. We'll get the answer. We'll send that out as a follow-up. So I'm not sure where we are on that now.
A
And
lot
when,
less than last.
yeah, when and where is the next CAPS beat meeting? So, there's a different meeting for each beat that we've had in the last week. Yesterday was Canaryville, that beat, what beat is that? Nine, was that 9:25? 9:14 and 9:13, I think they're together. And then 9:15, no, 9:15 and 6. The Daily Library, Chinatown Library, and then St. Gabe's in Canaryville. And then a 9:12 is in McKinley Park at the McKinley Park Fieldhouse. So all of these have happened except for Chinatown. I think the Chinatown beat meeting is next week on Wednesday. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. This is in every single newsletter when the next CAPS meeting is happening. And just for the people that are in the room who can't see the chat, one of the questions that was asked is just the availability of CAPS meetings via Zoom. In May, if you're the same May that I'm thinking of, thank you for joining us. It was your suggestion that made us actually start to look at this. We have had Zoom meetings for 2 of the last 3 CAPS meetings. We're trying this out. We weren't able to do it for the Canaryville one, but we did record it for Daily Library and at McKinley Park. So using the same technology that we are today, we'll get those posted, and we're going to continue to work with the CAPS offices to make sure that that these meetings are accessible to more people. Any other questions for Amanda Mullinax?
Don't hesitate to ask, I'll answer it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
No, thank you for coming. I know how busy you are.
and thank you very much for this.
Okay, and then we'll look forward to National Night Out, which is August 1st, and it's at Davis Square Park. National Night Out is going to be here in the next for Davis Square Park. There's probably going to be 300 or 400 people attending the event. We'll bring people from all over the district to have a great night out. Show community support for just being out and about and doing something fun and safe. Maybe the mayor might even be there. Who knows? I put it out there. Now I gotta make sure he gets there. Thanks a lot, Amanda.
Not a problem, thank you very much.
All right. Moving on, and we're right just before 7, so I feel like we're right on schedule. Okay, 35th Street. And the incident at Fox Park, I think now it's been about a month. Since we had a reckless driver drive through speed out of the viaduct going east on 35th Street. And rather than stop behind the car that were stopped there, he jumped the curb and ended up hitting 4 pedestrians. It's a miracle that nobody was killed or more seriously injured. I want to thank the first responders that were there. We have a number of members of the Chicago Fire Department here. And I know that they were among the first on the scene, administering first aid. There was one gentleman, unfortunately, who was hit and flew into the sunroof of the vehicle that hit him. Thankfully, the police and the SWAT teams that were nearby were able to catch the driver on the Dan Ryan with the man still hanging in the car. They've been caught, but there's since then, as you can imagine, been a lot of conversation about safety in and around the ballpark, which is why we've got some guests with us here tonight. Like I said, we've got Chicago Fire Department, we've got a representative from CDOT, we have OAMC in the room. Right there, so you're sitting there so quietly, because I haven't met you in person yet.
Yeah.
But have we met?
I was actually around office. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Previously.
Hi. Hey. You look 10 years younger. Thank you. It was a terrible recovery. I apologize. I wanted to bring the folks that we've been talking to, about improving pedestrian and cyclist safety, in and around the ballpark. I received no fewer than 50 emails and phone calls, from constituents who are concerned about what happened, and asking specifically for 35th Street to be closed off between Wentworth and Normal, during ball games. So that, my commitment has always been to talk to the experts, to consult with people that know, sort of these systems the best, to look at how we might change things. This is the only incident that we know, that we know about that has never happened like this. And I think I was quoted in the WBBM story saying that we can't solve for idiot drivers, and that is the truth. You live anywhere in the ward, if you live anywhere in the city, post-COVID, I think drivers have oftentimes lost their mind, with how fast they're going down streets. This person was very reckless, and shy of having, I think, concrete barriers to close off the street. We've already seen, in other instances, unfortunately, even in like parades where people with cars, can plow through people. And what I didn't want to do is to have a knee-jerk reaction and not think about the ramifications of closing down the street at 35th Street, or even if that was the best way to improve traffic safety. So where we are now, we've had a meeting, with OEMC, with CDOT and the White Sox as well. We have somebody from the White Sox here.
He wasn't able to.
He wasn't able to make it. Okay, that's fine. They sent forward just like a follow-up note with us as well. So we had a meeting, about a week and a half ago, to talk through what the current protocols are. Bob's here from OEMC. He can talk to us a little bit about, the conditions under which streets are actually closed, during the ball game, on 35th Street to different traffic. It's not that it's never closed to vehicular traffic. There are just circumstances which push them into that closure. So do you want to talk a little bit about how we manage? OEMC is really the body within the city that manages all of the traffic around stadiums like Guaranteed Rate Field.
Yeah, so specifically for 35th and Shield, we do try to keep there for every game, and that's where they cross people cross 35th, who want to cross 35th. 35th is actually closed at every game on the outs. So all the fans are coming out, it is closed between Wentworth and Long Lakes. Before the game though, it's more of a judgment call. So there's about probably less than 10 games where the number of fans going to the park where it requires to maybe close 35th, and that'd be like the opening day game, the big crowd, usually cross town classic with the Cubs, which is actually next week, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's probably one of the games that we might close it before the game starts. And then obviously any playoff game or things like that. Usually though the number of people required to be closed off before the game. What happens is before the game is the earlier, obviously, at the end of the game, it's later at the end. Sometimes before the game, it's like people pull like an hour out. So it would just cause a lot more traffic in the traditional areas, would affect a lot of the businesses. And plus, Stock has a 35th Street overpass, so no one has to cross 35th at all. So I've been working with them all year. I've been working with them, specifically after the accident, we've been working with them and talking over different things. So every lot that's north of 35th, that's A, B, C, and D, and G, those are all two-time lots. So they're prepaid, and so any prepaid two-time, they call it, is encouraged to use the 35th Street overpass, which is access to the gate drive. Also, they're now since the fact that they're putting up these, sandwich boards on the sidewalk as you approach 35th, from the north on Shields. So, if they missed it on the keypad or on the website, it's on there too. Those should be able to see the film. So, anybody who does not feel comfortable crossing 35th, if they do green. Now let's see that for, speak about what they're gonna be doing. We're obviously in those meetings too, let's see that. And then I know you guys met the group commander from one of our previous meetings about a week or two ago. The old commander, Don Jerome, he even said he doesn't remember any accident over there. And he's been in the negative for many years. So we really believe that this was an isolated incident by an out of control reckless driver, and hopefully we'll have.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bob. And as I said in that meeting, I think that the protocols that are in have been generally working really well, because, and I agree that this is more of an isolated incident. I think there is some room for improvement, I think, and that's what CDOT committed to taking on, was to do an additional traffic study to really take a look at what physical structures we could put in, whether that's a raised crosswalk or curb bump out to make the drivable lanes short or not as wide, and then make the distance that you would have to walk shorter as well. So we're still waiting for the results of that. I think we should have that soon, but we also have Carl from CDOT as well. Is there anything you want to add to the conversation?
Yes, it's a multi-disciplinary area to kind of issue out and we're really good grasp on everything. So we have on the 407 and then part of that to closing the street more often, and that's going to impact people that are driving that bus in the neighborhood. So there's more things considered as we go beyond in terms of the neighborhood. With this, we are looking at long-term fixes that, there's going to be a study, it takes time to analyze data, takes time to then, decide procedures, recommendations, and implement construction. We're also looking at shorter term improvements, as those are developed, that we hear that the Alderman's office for consideration and taking to the rest of the city that they're all working with. So it's kind of a multi-track system right now, where you could see recommendations that should be possibly implemented very quickly, and then the longer term practice study that they take longer to implement, but be physical curve changes, traffic signals.
Thanks for that, Carl. That's a great segue into just managing everybody's expectations about what's possible in the short term and in the long term. The signs that Bob mentioned, sandwich boards directing people to go use the pedestrian, the gate 5 entrance, which has the walkover across 35th Street, was a direct result and outcome of our conversation with the sort of multi-department and including the White Sox conversation. I think part of this can be accomplished with communication too, just to let people know that they never have to actually physically cross the street. They have an option for a bridge. That they're increasing the signage and then making sure that, any communications channel that they have reinforces that you can enter the ballpark on the north side of 35th Street. Some of the things I think Carl was referring to is, we're looking at improving signage, maybe repainting stripes on a crosswalk. I think the White Sox are also very interested in a raised crosswalk. I think there's a great opportunity to, from a visual perspective too, to do something that, coordinated with the Sox, but to take over that whole intersection on both sides of Shields essentially, for a raised crosswalk. We're going to wait for the recommendations, obviously, from CDOT. But I think things that we can do in the short term are going to include things like restriping the street, putting up more signage, warning people further out from the stadium that, you're entering, ballpark territory, be prepared for, high traffic. I am concerned about, when the game is over, getting out of the stadium, you can walk, the streets closed, people go to their cars and they drive. They've got really well thought out routes to leave the ballpark. The people who can't though are the people that are on bicycles. I think that that's one of the things that CDOT will also be looking at is how do we improve bike access, in and out of the ballpark. With protected lanes, because if you're trying to get out and you're on a bicycle, I don't think that you can actually ride out right after the game. Is letting out, because there are too many pedestrians, and not, any sort of protected lane for them to ride. So that is something that we've got an eye toward in the longer term fixes, for that corridor. Are there any questions in the Zoom room, in this room in particular? I asked all the first responder groups to be here. I love that the fire department showed up with 4 people. It's awesome. Anything that you all want to learn in terms of your expertise about just, we're responding to emergencies in and around the ballpark and things that you all have seen?
On the outside of the park, there every so often, usually nothing too serious. That this is an isolated incident for us, we go back as well. Not seeing anything other than,
That's great.
people that are down from the unknown spot every day, you're seeing. So, and the inside of the ballpark is protected by a 5 ambulance service, so we like our. Cross the traffic on the district before and after the game, it's difficult to get down there for us as well, so if that's blocked, we also can't get to the.
Right. And I was gonna ask that question too, because when I talk to constituents about infrastructure changes that may block off a street, like a cul-de-sac or a speed bump or any of those things. We always have to consider the accessibility of emergency vehicles to get to the system as well. So yet another consideration for us as we're looking at how we improve safety in the area.
I think the traffic people out there do a great job directing the traffic out there, but. We went to events there where there haven't been the traffic, people directing the traffic and controlling and flow, and definitely make a difference. Maybe more of that.
Thank you. Anything else?
On the fire suppression, we were talking with different companies that are in production vehicles. And, or why, because of them pretty well.
Great, thank you. I'm just checking the chat. I don't see any questions. If there are none, we can move on to the next topic. You have a raised hand? You have a raised hand, okay. Do you want to come off mute? Volume up. Anna, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Okay. I guess just more of a comment about how disappointing it is to hear the victims in this be blamed and try to be shuttled off of the public way and into special overhead walkways. People want access to the streets, and if cars are the problem, we need to get cars off and drivers off of the streets. I don't see why we don't just close 35th Street to cars during games already, because it's inaccessible to people in the neighborhood who are trying to get through or trying to get home. If I'm traveling in a car when the game is starting, we have to go around the whole park area to try to get out of the neighborhood. And when I'm arriving home at night in a car, if it's a game night, OEMC won't let us turn onto 35th to go west from the expressway anyway. We have to go down all the way down to Pershing and then come back up Morgan or another street. So we're already dealing with that sort of frustration, and that it's extra time and extra effort to go drive when we could usually cut through. So I think if we're already dealing with these obstacles, why don't we just close it off and make it as safe as possible?
So Anna, it's not an off the table conversation right now. There's not a determination that's been made either way as to whether or not to close 35th Street before the game. We know that the street is closed on the exit. Bob from OEMC actually shared that with us earlier. And there are certain situations where the 35th Street is closed before the game as well, and that's really driven by the number of people that are attending the game. So I hear what you're saying. I want to be clear, closing the street off before the game is not off the table. I want to have more time to work with the experts here. My concern is that we think through all of the consequences of closing down Normal, 35th Street between Normal and Wentworth in advance of a game, and what that's going to do to drive traffic and push traffic into the residential areas, which we also know experience a lot of people speeding through the neighborhood already. So I don't want to inadvertently cause there to be increased traffic on residential streets where we want people to be safe in their neighborhoods as well. So it's a lot to consider, but it's certainly not off the table at this point. I'm sorry that, I know that it's disappointing to a lot of people that the street isn't already closed. But I want to make sure we're thinking through the impact of any decision that we make to redirect any traffic. But I appreciate your question and your comments. Anybody else? Okay. 15 minutes. I feel like we're right on time. We'll save a couple minutes for sort of any other questions that come up. Wanted to provide an update on the migrant situation. We have had, and I can see it on the presentation, new arrivals to date in the city of Chicago since last August is approximately 11,000 plus. That number is we don't have an exact number at any given time because there are people coming from multiple methods of transportation. There's people that are entering through airports, both airports, Midway and O'Hare, buses that are coming to Union Station, and even people coming in on trains. Currently in shelters, 5,268. Individuals arriving from Texas just in the last week is 272. I was asked earlier how many busloads that is, and I don't know. I can't give you that number because I don't actually know how many came by bus. Everybody. Okay. And then the number of migrants in permanent housing is 502. It's a really small number compared to the number that have come. So a lot of them are in shelters. A lot of them, as you know, if you drive Halsted at all, and you drive past the 9th district, you see right now we have a large number of families. It's about, the number fluctuates 20 to 30 people. Families are some of the hardest to place into shelters because they have to have the right space for them in order to move them into a shelter. And that's a lot of what the city is focusing on now, is moving people out of shelters and into more permanent housing situations. I think we're coming upon in the next couple of weeks some really challenging times in that the shelters, the temporary shelters that have been set up at Daly College as well as Wright College are going to be going back to the school. So the beginning of August is when they were supposed to be decommissioned, if you will, a shelter. And that's several hundred people, probably 500 between the two sites. The city is looking at opening up additional shelters. I've seen at least 4 other sites that they're looking at, including like the Broadway Armory, potentially as one. We're trying to get the federal government to respond and take some action. So one of the things that a lot of us older people feel could make a really big difference is to provide temporary work permits to the asylum seekers who are here so that they can go get jobs and they can fend for themselves. I mean, everybody that I've talked to who is here, they're asking for work. Do you know of anybody that's hiring house cleaner or whatever? They want to work. They don't want to rely on somebody else to provide their children with meals or clothes or anything like that. So I want to make sure everybody understands sort of what we're up against. The state has made an additional $91 million of relief funds available. 25 million of that allocated directly to try to do rental assistance so that we can get people into apartments and houses. And an additional $15 million allocated to help the unhoused that we have that are not related to migrants. So the homeless that we have already in the city. I want to also note that none of the funding that the city has made available has taken away from existing programs. Directed towards the unhoused in the city of Chicago. We know that there's a lot of work to do on that. We really appreciate that the state made some additional funding available to help supplement what we're already doing with the unhoused. There was a resolution in the city council that was introduced yesterday, and I signed on as a co-sponsor, to get the state to provide temporary work permits to migrants. It's not something that we can do at the city level without the state's approval and action. So, well, you know, we're really trying to get the, other branches of government and other, and the state and federal to help us out, in the sense, because there's really, from what we can do from a city perspective, I think we're doing all of it. And really, I want to acknowledge that all of the volunteers that are part of these mutual aid organizations in every police district, not the least of which is here in the 9th district. So for those of you that don't know, since the beginning of this crisis, there have been volunteers, the Bridgeport Alliance and other organizations that have come together, opened up their own homes for storage. They've been collecting items, to provide to the migrants as they come with nothing, that a bus might arrive in the middle of the night and, you know, it's oddly cold this summer in Chicago. And we don't have pillows or blankets or anything like that, and where they're being placed is in police stations. I think we all agree, police station is no place for anybody to be sleeping. And it's not good for the migrants. It's not good for the police. It's not good for the citizens that are coming in to file reports and get services in that way either. But I really want to commend the volunteers that I've gotten to know through this process. We have donation sites with all of the elected officials in and around the 11th ward. And what we've done is we've turned my old campaign office into a donation shop, free shop where the migrants can come and shop with dignity for the things that they need. It's also supplying other police districts as well. So we've also worked on a shower program. There is a day designated at Wilson Community Center. We take migrants who would like to take a shower on that day to the community center. We provide them with all the amenities to take their showers. The Unity Center, sorry, I had to search for the name in my head. The Unity Center has also been like a really amazing contributor to all of this as well. They have a couple of showers there and they welcome the migrants to go in there, and they have a shop set up there as well. And then there have been food donations and different nonprofit organizations who have been providing meals. It's not a solution. It is barely a Band-Aid, but it's ensuring that while the migrants are here, that they have the things that they need. I don't even want to say we're making them as comfortable as we can, because there's nothing comfortable about it. If I hit on my point here. And appreciate all of the generosity of the people in the ward. Please stop bringing us stuff right now. We're at capacity for space in the shop. We've got to get through some of the things that we have. We do continue to have a need though for boys and men's clothing in the smaller sizes though. So for men, I think we said 32 waist and smaller. I'm drawing a blank for the other stuff that we need. Medicine, yes.
Especially what I think in both men and women, as we transition to the workforce, luggages are always useful.
They go like hotcakes.
Right, and
Yeah,
more casual.
but athletic shoes are,
Yeah.
okay.
Diapers, maybe like.
Those are things that we'll continue to take. Please don't, and vitamins. We don't need any more women's clothes. We definitely don't need like formal dress clothes. Please don't bring us high heels. We've gotten it, trust me. And that is always a challenge when you do drives like this. Everybody wants to be very generous, but the practicalities of it all is that we end up having to donate to other places like Unique Thrift, or in other cases where there are items that we determine aren't suitable to give away. So, you know, they may end up in the trash. Yes, we can repeat what folks need in the chat. Okay, do you want to put that in the chat? So we'll continue to take those. We have had some toy donations. We're holding those right now because we don't really have a place for the children to be. So we do know that there are families that are starting to find more permanent housing in the ward. I know that, I think there are at least 2 families, if I'm not mistaken, who were at the 9th district that got through the system and have rental assistance and have chosen to settle in the 11th ward. So those individuals knew about the shop, so they're coming back to the various, I'm sure they're going to both places at this point. So we're looking for ways to, provide these other resources as well. Any questions on the migrant? Yes.
We all have the school, they also,
Yeah.
in our community, and obviously they have like. They're also their buildings and they're like transient populations. They are students, right, there's what kind of conversations that they're going on. The kids in schooling.
Yep.
That a lot of support them and the school staff. And, well,
Yeah, so you may have seen that earlier in the week, CPS put out a press release, and I think it's been in the news. They've opened up a welcome center as a pilot at Clemente High School, and it's meant to be more consolidated wraparound services. Where migrants that are arriving can go to seek services, including getting students registered for school. Any child that is in the city of Chicago, regardless of their status, is entitled to education in a CPS school. And this has been a topic of conversation. I think it's been going on for a while now. The city is also really leaning hard, as you know, as you're called on the mutual aid groups, and they're offering training coming up here to volunteers who want to receive some training on how to support the migrants who have been through traumas and then be connected to the resources where they can sign up for school. It is very difficult when they're in a, like you said, a transient position and they're temporarily staying in the 9th district. What school do you register them? I mean, you could register them for like Holden down the street. But they may be moving from that, from the 9th district to a shelter that is across town. Then they're gonna be put to another school. So I think that, I think the city and CPS really need to think about, first and foremost, how do we get people out of this transient situation? Because the better places, the more stable places, in a shelter where we know they're gonna be for a couple of months, and then look to target areas where they can, find more stable housing. But that is something that CPS and the city are trying to work out right now. It's not lost on them, especially because school starts in a few weeks. Yeah, and there is a focus also on bilingual and language skills teachers. One of the best things that we can do for any of these migrants is really teach them English, teach your children English so that they can function better wherever they end up, whether that's Chicago or. Anything else? Thank you for the question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the work permits, how do you qualify a person, like if they have a work permit that you want to offer a job to, how do you, then you background check before the receipt of the permit?
So today, what I understand is the process at the border, because I'll start this with and I think it's worth noting. The people that are here are asylum seekers. They are not illegals, as a lot of people will call them. They are legally here in the United States as asylum seekers. They have approval from the United States to be in the country. They've gone through some level of screening at the border and through the State Department. What they don't have is documentation to be able to enable them to work. So if you were going to hire somebody today, you would want a driver's license, social security number, which would give you some sense that and something that you could track. I mean, if you are an employer who does background check, you would use. So I don't have a super straight answer for you, but the idea right now that any of the migrants that are working under the table. They are vulnerable to people taking advantage of them. And you know, these are all very scary things that are realities for these individuals right now. And the faster that they're given the opportunity and the proper documentation to to work legally and not risk their asylum cases, the better off I think that they will be and we will be as a community. Any other questions? Yes.
It's not about migrants. I'm a little owl on student girls. Really what I mean.
Hi, Phil, how are you?
I'm in Ward 11. I was pretty curious if you would have an opinion about what some of your colleagues are trying to do with Southern Way. The work that's being done there.
Phil, I would be happy to have a separate discussion with you. This is meant to be a venue,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Any other questions about any topic for the 11th ward? Residents, anything? We still have SOX parking permits, stickers and passes at the office if you need them, come see us. One thing that we didn't mention earlier that we get asked about a lot is tree trimming. And if you aren't up on the news, the Forestry Bureau has determined that they will no longer do sort of this spot tree trimming, where you call in a 311 request and then you get on a waiting list. As you may recall from a few years ago, the forestry department is always behind, and at the end of last year had just gotten caught up to 2021. So they made a determination that it's going to be more effective for the city to trim every single tree in the city of Chicago, and trim it enough so that it doesn't need to be trimmed again for 5 years. But it's probably going to take 7 for them to get through all of these trees. So what they've done is they divided every ward up into a grid. And grid by grid, and you may see this in and around the ward as you're driving, where within a grid, they will trim every single tree. So you'll know that they've been there, drive down the street, and the trees look like ladies with short skirts on. But the trees are trimmed so high that they just look like super tall trees. But the idea is that they don't need trimming again for at least 5 years. So they've gotten through one whole grid so far. They're finishing up a second one and they're probably going to start a third one here before too long. But they are on an emergency basis. If there's a tree that has that is, on somebody's roof about to break a window, that sort of thing, we can do those on sort of an emergency basis. But for the most part, we're pushing everybody into this grid situation. So if you've got questions about those, you can send those into us. We're always happy to put the request in. We can't make you any promises as to whether they're gonna show up. Okay, the question here. Actually. Okay, they're supposed to trim the trees on our block 33rd and normal on July 11th and 18th, but they never showed up. Will they come back another time? If they haven't shown up yet and they had the signs up, they will come back. We can check on that. If you shoot us a text or an email, give us your email, we'll get back to you as to the timing. Is there anything that we can do to prevent the expansion of the I-55 expressway? I think that is something that the state approves. I think as far as anything that we can do to prevent the expansion, my understanding is that that's already been voted for and passed. But I could be wrong about that. That's something that I think is a better question for our state representatives and state senators.
I would say on the city side, it has not authorized any plans for that expansion, so we highly recommend that we reach out to our state representative.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today. If you've got questions for our ward office, we are always ready to take your calls. We may not be able to answer the questions immediately, but we'll get back to you. And please encourage everybody to get involved in these committees that we have. There are upcoming ward events. I talked about the Chinatown Summer Fair, July 29th and 30th. Please come out to National Night Out on August 1st. We're going to be having a senior picnic at Armour Square for all the senior club members on August 3rd. back to school event with the Pington Park Advisory Council on August 5th, and then the, St. Rocco, parade on August 13th. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming. Yes.